Are you lost, sir? The public viewing area is 2 blocks down. The voice was sharp, laced with the self-important shrillness of someone given a sliver of power and determined to wield it like a broadsword. Clark, the parade marshal, planted his feet wide, his fluorescent yellow vest a garish stain against the patriotic pomp of the day. He pointed a clipboard at the old man standing patiently by the security gate. "This is a restricted access point, sir, for participants only." Elias Vance, 82 years young, said nothing. His gaze was fixed on the street beyond the gate, where the ground had begun to tremble. The low, guttural growl of 60 tons of American steel was rolling closer. The first M1 Abrams tank, its desert camouflage a jarring memory of a different sun, was inching into view. It was a beautiful, terrible machine. Elias felt the vibration not in his ears but deep in his bones, a familiar hum that resonated with a lifetime of such sounds. He wore a simple light blue work shirt, faded from 1,000 washes and bleached by a sun half a world away. His hands, wrinkled and spotted with age, rested calmly at his sides. "Sir, did you hear me?" Clark stepped closer, his shadow falling over Elias. "I need to see your credentials, or you need to move along. You're blocking the access point." The parade marshal was a man in his late 30s, his face flushed with a mixture of heat and irritation. He saw an old man out of place, confused, wearing a shirt that looked like it had been pulled from a donation bin. He saw a problem to be solved, a box to be checked. He did not see the man who had taught 2 generations of tankers how to make these machines sing their deadly song. The lead tank, its massive turret adorned with a small American flag, rumbled past the gate. The crew commander, a young captain, was visible in the hatch, his face a mask of professional focus. He didn't see the quiet drama unfolding at the checkpoint. To him, it was just another face in the crowd. For Elias, watching it pass was a small, sharp pain, a promise unfulfilled. That was supposed to be his seat. "My name is Elias Vance," the old man said, his voice quiet but clear, not a quaver in it. "I was told to meet the column commander here. I'm the guest of honor." Clark let out a short, incredulous laugh. He glanced at the other volunteers, a pair of college students who shrugged, their expressions a mixture of pity and impatience. "Guest of honor?" Clark tapped his clipboard. "I have the list right here. Every dignitary, every politician, every junior ROTC member. There is no Elias Vance on this list, so unless you're the mayor in disguise, you need to clear the area." The confrontation, initially a minor inconvenience, began to curdle into a public spectacle. The noise of the parade, the marching bands, the cheering crowd seemed to fade, replaced by the focused tension at the gate. People waiting to cross the street began to watch, their curiosity piqued by the day-glow vest and the quiet stillness of the old man. The second tank in the column, then the third, rolled by. Each one was a reminder of what Elias was being denied. The smell of diesel exhaust, a scent he once equated with safety and overwhelming power, now felt like a taunt. "I don't have a credential," Elias explained, his patience a deep, unshakable well. "They said my name would be enough. I was an instructor at Fort Knox for the M1 program." Clark's face hardened. The old man wasn't just confused, he was delusional. This was a new level of annoyance. "Sir, I don't have time for war stories. This is a city parade, not a VFW hall. The Fort Knox Armor School has been gone for years. It's at Fort Benning now. You're not just wrong, you're decades out of date." He puffed out his chest, the authority of his vest seeming to swell with him. "Now, for the last time, please step away from the gate. You are creating a security issue." The 2 student volunteers, emboldened by Clark's certitude, moved to flank the parade marshal, forming a small, unimposing wall. One of them spoke, her voice trying for firm but landing on condescending. "Sir, maybe you should go find your family. They're probably looking for you." Elias's calm exterior remained, but a flicker of something ancient and weary passed through his eyes. He wasn't angry, he was profoundly tired. He had faced down enemy tanks in the dark of night, navigated minefields under artillery fire, and held the hands of dying boys who had called him sir. And here he was, on a sun-drenched street in the heart of the country he'd served, being told he was a confused old man by a functionary with a clipboard. A small crowd had now gathered. Phones were starting to appear, though more to capture the spectacle of the passing tanks than the human drama at the gate. Clark, aware of the audience, decided to make an example. He wanted to show everyone how efficiently he could handle a disruption. He pulled a small radio from his belt. "Dispatch, this is Marshal 1 at Gate 4. I have a non-compliant individual, elderly, possibly disoriented, requesting assistance for removal." The word removal hung in the air, ugly and final. It was no longer a misunderstanding. It was a formal, public humiliation. Elias simply looked down at his faded blue shirt, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. He ran a thumb over a small, barely visible stain near the pocket, a dark discoloration that no amount of washing had ever removed. The world seemed to fall away for a moment, the sounds of the parade replaced by a different roar. The heat of the American summer became the searing, dry heat of an Iraqi desert. The light blue shirt, then crisp and new, was plastered to his skin with sweat and grime. He was in the commander's hatch of his own Abrams, the turret vibrating with the engine's power. Below him, inside the cramped, metallic belly of the beast, a young crew was near panic. The radio was spitting frantic, broken transmissions about a flanking maneuver, an unexpected enemy column that had punched through their lines. "They're coming through. Sir, they're coming right through the wadi," a young loader had screamed, his voice cracking with terror. Elias had keyed his mic, his own voice the only calm thing in a world of chaos. "Steady, son. We hold here. We are the wall." He remembered the acrid smell of hydraulic fluid, a small leak from a damaged line. A drop of it had spattered onto his chest, right where his thumb now rested on his shirt. It was a tiny mark, a physical anchor to the moment he and his crew had become the fulcrum upon which an entire battle turned. They held the line. They were the wall. The memory was as vivid as the fluorescent vest now filling his vision. Back in the present, Clark was speaking again, his voice oozing with false concern. "Look, old-timer, we're just trying to help you. We can't have you wandering into the parade route. It's for your own safety." In the small knot of onlookers, a man in uniform stood motionless. He was an army captain, his crisp dress greens looking formal and out of place amidst the casual crowd. He was in charge of coordinating the tank crew's logistics for the event, and had been delayed by the traffic. At first, he'd been annoyed by the holdup at the gate. He heard the parade marshal's loud pronouncements, and saw the old man. Then he heard the name, Elias Vance. The captain went still. The name wasn't just a name, it was a legend. A ghost story told to new lieutenants at the armor school. Elias Vance, the man who wrote half the tactical manuals they still studied. The man who had a tank maneuver named after him. The Vance pivot. He had heard whispers that the guest of honor for this parade wasn't a politician, but a real hero, a legend from the old guard. They said he was a quiet man who always wore a simple blue shirt. The captain looked from the arrogant parade marshal to the calm, weathered face of the old man. He saw the faded shirt. A cold knot of dread and fury formed in his stomach. He saw Clark on the radio, heard the word removal. He saw the two local police officers beginning to make their way through the crowd toward the gate. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a sacrilege. He couldn't intervene directly, not without causing a massive incident and overstepping his rank in a civilian matter. But he could make a call. He pulled out his personal cell phone, his fingers flying across the screen. He scrolled through his contacts to a number he prayed he would never have to use. A direct line he'd been given in a pre-parade briefing for absolute catastrophic emergencies only. This, he decided, qualified. The phone on the other end rang once, twice. A crisp, professional voice answered. "General's aide." The captain kept his voice low, turning away from the scene. "This is Captain Miller, 1st Armored Division, at the city parade. Sir, I apologize for using this line. We have a situation at the North Gate. It's about Mr. Vance." There was a pause on the other end. "The Mr. Vance?" "Yes, sir," Miller breathed, relief and anxiety warring in his chest. "The guest of honor, Elias Vance. The parade marshal won't let him in. He's not on the list. Sir, they're about to have him removed by local police. He's right here in front of me." The captain's voice was tight with suppressed outrage. He watched as the two officers reached the gate, their expressions polite but firm, ready to carry out the marshal's request. He had done all he could. The rest was up to the gods of the command structure. Hundreds of miles away in a quiet, climate-controlled office at the Pentagon, a 2-star general's aide listened to the captain's frantic whisper. The aide's back went ramrod straight. He was monitoring the live feed of the parade on a large screen, part of the Army's public relations oversight. He had been half watching, mostly bored, but now his full attention snapped into focus. "Say that again, Captain," the aide said, his voice dropping to a dangerous hush. He gestured urgently to a colleague, pointing at the screen and then his phone. Captain Miller repeated the information, his own voice strained. "They're calling him disoriented. They're treating him like a vagrant." The aide didn't wait to hear more. He put the call on a brief hold and strode quickly into the adjoining office, foregoing a knock. Inside, the Army Chief of Staff, a 4-star general, was meeting with a trio of congressmen. The aide walked directly to him. "General, I apologize for the interruption, but this is a code red priority." The congressman looked startled, The general, a man whose face was a map of harsh decisions and sleepless nights, simply raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "Sir, Elias Vance is being detained at the National Pride Parade." The general's face, which had been a mask of political neutrality, went blank for a single second. It was the kind of blankness that preceded either a volcanic eruption or a glacially cold command. The name Elias Vance had transformed the room's atmosphere. He knew the name. Every armor officer knew that name. "Get me CENTCOM Parade Command," the general said, his voice lethally soft. His aide was already dialing. "No, wait. Patch me through directly to the column commander. On the command channel. Now." He turned to the bewildered congressman. "Gentlemen, you'll have to excuse me. We have a national treasure being insulted by a man with a clipboard. This will not stand." Back at the sun-baked gate, Clark felt a surge of triumph. The police had arrived. The situation was now in their hands. He had done his job. He had maintained order. He straightened his fluorescent vest and adopted a grave, concerned tone for the benefit of the officers. "Thank you for the quick response, officers," he said. "As you can see, this gentleman is confused. He keeps insisting he's the guest of honor, but he has no pass, no invitation, and he's not on any list. He's becoming a public nuisance." He then made his final disastrous overreach. He turned back to Elias, his voice dripping with condescension. "Sir, you have two choices. You can walk away with your dignity, or these officers can escort you. We can even call an ambulance and have you taken for a nice medical checkup. Make sure you're not a danger to yourself." The threat was clear. Comply, or be treated like you're senile and incompetent. Elias simply stared back, his silence more powerful than any argument Clark could muster. The officers exchanged a weary glance, preparing to do the unpleasant work of removing an old man from a parade. It was then that a new sound sliced through the air, a sound utterly alien to a parade procession. It was the sharp, commanding blast of an M1 Abrams horn. Once, twice, the lead tank, which had been a block down the street, ground to an immediate, shuddering halt. Its turbine engine, which had been at a low rumble, spooled down with a protesting whine. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Then the second tank stopped, and the third, all down the line. 62 tons of war machine after 62 tons of war machine came to a dead stop, creating an impassable wall of steel in the middle of the city's main avenue. The parade was dead in the water. Clark stared, his mouth agape. "What in the world are they doing?" he stammered. As if in answer, the turret of the lead tank, Valiant, began to slew slowly to the right. It wasn't a fast combat movement. It was a deliberate, inexorable turn, until its massive 120 mm cannon was pointing directly in the general direction of Gate 4. The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Phones were now all pointing at the unfolding drama. Then, from behind the third tank, a military Humvee with flashing lights peeled out of the formation. It ignored the parade route, hopping the curb and speeding across the manicured park lawn, tearing up turf as it raced directly toward the gate. The Humvee screeched to a halt just feet from the security checkpoint. The passenger door flew open before it had fully stopped, and a full-bird colonel burst out. His face was a thundercloud of fury. He was the column commander. He didn't even glance at the police officers or the dumbstruck parade marshal. His eyes scanned the small group and locked onto the old man in the faded blue shirt. The colonel marched with a purpose that radiated pure, unadulterated authority. He strode directly to Elias Vance, his polished boots clicking on the pavement. He stopped 1 foot away, drew himself to his full height, and executed the sharpest, most profound salute of his entire career. His hand sliced through the air and stopped, quivering at his brow. "Mr. Vance," the colonel's voice boomed, clear and ringing with a reverence that stunned the onlookers into silence. "On behalf of the United States Army and the 1st Armored Division, I offer my deepest, most sincere apologies for this disgraceful delay. We were waiting for you." The salute held. Elias, for the first time, looked away from the tanks and met the colonel's eyes. A small, weary smile touched his lips, and he gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The colonel dropped his salute and turned, his gaze falling upon Clark like a physical blow. "You," the colonel said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Are you the parade marshal?" Clark, pale and trembling, could only nod, his clipboard hanging uselessly at his side. "This man," the colonel said, his voice rising again so everyone in the vicinity could hear, "is Elias Vance. He isn't on your list because his name is the list. He was a master gunner at the armor school when I was a cherry lieutenant, learning which end of the tank the shells came out of. He literally wrote the book on M1 tactical employment that we still use today. He holds the Distinguished Service Cross for actions taken during Desert Storm, where he held off an entire Republican Guard armored company with a single damaged tank, saving his entire battalion, a battalion that included my father. He took a step closer to Clark, who involuntarily flinched. "That light blue shirt you seem to have a problem with." He was wearing it that day. "It is more of a uniform than anything I am wearing right now. He is our guest of honor. He is a living legend. And that lead tank, Valiant, that's his ride for the day. He was supposed to be on it when it passed, but you, in your infinite wisdom, decided to deny him entry." The colonel's words fell like hammer blows. The crowd was utterly silent, every phone now recording, capturing the public dismantling of Clark and the vindication of the quiet old man. The two police officers looked at each other, then took a respectful step back, their expressions a mix of horror and embarrassment. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers, words like hero and oh my God spreading from person to person. A few of the older men in the crowd, veterans themselves, subtly straightened their own posture, their eyes fixed on Elias with a newfound, or perhaps rekindled, respect. The colonel wasn't finished. He looked past Clark to the city officials who were now rushing toward the scene, drawn by the unscheduled halt. "The Chief of Staff of the United States Army personally ordered this column to a full stop," the colonel announced, letting the weight of that statement settle. "He sends his regards to Miss Vance, and his profound disappointment to the organizers of this event. You will all be hearing from his office." Clark stammered, his face ashen. "I was just following procedure, I didn't know." It was Elias who spoke then, breaking the charged silence. He placed a gentle, wrinkled hand on the colonel's rigid arm. The colonel visibly relaxed at his touch. "It's all right, son," Elias said, his voice calm and forgiving. "The man was just doing his job. A little too well, perhaps, but he was following his orders." He turned his gaze to Clark, and there was no malice in it, only a deep, abiding wisdom. Sometimes the most important credentials aren't printed on a piece of paper or worn on a lapel. Sometimes they're written in the dust of forgotten places, or in the lives you've touched. You just have to learn how to see them. As Elias spoke those words, the memory returned sharp and clear, not of battle but of its immediate aftermath. The desert air was thick with smoke and the smell of burnt metal. He was on the ground, his own hands shaking slightly from adrenaline. He knelt beside a young tanker, the boy's face pale with shock, streaked with grease and tears. It was the colonel's father. Then just a boy of 19, Elias had unbuttoned his own light blue shirt, using the clean inside of the fabric to gently wipe the grime from the young man's face. "We got through it, son," he had said, his voice a balm in the chaos. "We held the line. The shirt wasn't a relic of war. It was a testament to compassion, a symbol of mentorship passed from one generation to the next." The colonel, his anger subsiding into pure reverence, personally escorted Elias through the now parted gate. He led him to the lead M1 Abrams, where the tank commander and crew chief had dismounted. They both snapped to attention as Elias approached. The young crew chief, with a respect bordering on awe, helped the old man up the side of the tank and onto the turret. With Elias Vance finally in his rightful place, perched on the commander's hatch of Valiant, the colonel gave a crisp hand signal. The turbine engines of the 60-ton behemoth spooled up in unison, a chorus of rising power. The parade resumed. As the tank began to move, Elias gave a small, gentle wave to the crowd. The onlookers, who now understood the story, erupted into thunderous applause, a wave of sound that followed the tank column down the street. In the days that followed, the video of the confrontation at Gate 4 went viral. The city issued a formal public apology to Elias Vance. The parade committee was overhauled, and the man named Clark was quietly relieved of his duties, with the city mandating he attend a veterans outreach and sensitivity training program. Elias, who wanted no part of the fame, politely declined every interview request, preferring the quiet of his small home. A few weeks later, Clark was sitting in a local diner, stirring a cup of coffee, the humiliation still a fresh sting. He looked up as the bell over the door jingled. Elias Vance walked in, wearing a different but equally simple shirt. He took a seat at the far end of the counter, ordering a black coffee. Clark watched him for a long moment. Then, with a deep breath, he got up. He walked over to the counter, not to Elias but to the waitress. He put a $5 bill down. "That gentleman's coffee is on me," he said quietly, gesturing with his head. He then walked to where Elias was sitting. He didn't offer a long, rambling apology. He just stood there for a second until the old man looked up. "Mr. Vance," Clark said, his voice barely a whisper. Elias looked at him, his eyes holding no judgment. He simply nodded once, a small, accepting smile touching his lips. It was enough. Clark turned and walked out of the diner, leaving the hero to his coffee, a quiet moment of grace and understanding having passed between them. The quiet heroes walk among us every day. If this story of valor resonated with you, please like this video, Share it with others and subscribe to Veteran Valor for more stories of unassuming courage.